Can you all hear me loud and clear? Do we have the captions coming on? Yes, brilliant. Welcome, everybody in the room. Thank you so much for being here, and welcome also everybody on the internet. It's really great to be able to have you here as well. Thank you to our wonderful streaming service from Tom at the back there. And thank you to our captioners who are providing the text. This is an event called Brainwaves. Brains, consciousness, and the way we think has been one of our festival themes this year. So we've had a few events which have been about thinking. And actually, like, it's been quite a lot on the brain, but like my brain is totally ready for some more like thinking. And yeah, we've got three fantastic poets for you today. We've got Vicky Morris, Nafeesa, Hamid, and John McCullough, all of whose work sort of touches on this theme in some way, whether that's explorations of anxiety, experiences of neurodiversity, or just the way that their writing encourages us to think differently or embraces the idea of thinking differently. So the way it's going to go is we're going to have our three readings, and then I will invite all three poets up to the stage. We will sit and have a bit of a chat, and there will be the opportunity for audiences both in the room and on the internet to ask questions as well. So our first poet is Vicky Morris. She's a British Welsh poet, teacher and mentor. Her debut pamphlet, All of This Never Happened, was a winner of the Munster Fool for Poetry International Chapbook Competition and was shortlisted for Best Poetry Pamphlet in the Saboteur Awards. Vicky has built opportunities for young and emerging writers for many years, founding Hive in 2016. And those of you who saw the Hive event yesterday will have seen just how much work she puts into encouraging and supporting young writers in the city and also across South Yorkshire. And I was absolutely blown away by the quality of the work that's coming out of what Vicky does. So it's really, really impressive. But this event today is not about them, it's about you, Vicky, and your own fantastic poetry. So please welcome to the stage, Vicky Morris.
Oh, hello, everyone. That's very sweet. Thank you so much. Can you hear me all right? Yeah, because it feels like there's no microphone on, which is quite nice instead of that kind of reverb you get. I was kind of worrying about the light and various things, which will all become make sense in a minute. But Tom kindly turned the lights down for me. So yeah, I'm just going to crack on. So I've got poems that are around sort of stuff to do with the brain and navigating mental states. I think I've done that. And they can make me feel a bit vulnerable, these poems, but I think I want to sort of stay on the topic. So about 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with ASC or ASD, so autism spectrum condition or disorder, whichever you call it, and ADHD. I had no idea I had these two conditions. For people in the poetry community, you might have noticed quite a lot of particularly female poets finding out that they're on the spectrum. I've seen male poets as well, but I've noticed particularly female poets. And it was kind of a bit of a missing link for me in terms of who I was and why I've been struggling with certain things my whole life, basically. So I'm going to read a poem that's everything in the poem is made up of the questions they ask you on an adult assessment for ADHD. I'm hoping it'll give you a sense. It might disorientate you a bit, but it'll give you a sense of what it's like to have ADHD in some weird way. So this is called Adult Assessment. Are you an environment compelled to do things? Do you function as an interruption occurring alongside other problems? Can you spot energy leaving your place of fidget? Click to continue. How often do you expect a deadline to remain seated? Do you tend to have a reluctant workplace in your avoidance? In meetings, are you a motor blurting out lengthy noise? Click to continue. When out with obligations, do the symptoms squirm in conversations? Are your challenging parts able to wait in line? How often do you lose or damage a hobby, but into external stimuli? Click to continue. Are you prone to meeting mistakes in restaurants? Do you pay close attention to listening to someone's unrelated thoughts? Were several of their sentences present prior to age 12? Click to continue. Are you an extended period of sidetrack? Do you require sustained thought? Are you driven by finding yourself as a completed answer? So as you can see, I was driven by finding myself as a complete answer. Yeah, okay. So, what was interesting is I realised that I was kind of writing about neurodivergence and not realised that that's what I was doing. I was trying to get to the bottom of my strange family. And after my diagnosis, I could look at my family with that lens, and we're all on the spectrum. I'm not so sure whether my dad was, but yeah, it was really interesting. And so I thought I'd read a poem that I wrote about my mum. And it's got a line in it, and the line is forever trying to balance in her own gravity. And I think that was really me. My mum's definitely ASC and ADHD, but obviously I didn't realise that, and now she makes complete sense. But anyway, so this is called Sending You to Meet Mum. I've told her to stay put, to just wait until you see her and say, Margaret. You'll know her by her beige anorak, by her rounded shoulders, hunched from years of stooping low over sinks of holy water, bleaching the everyday out of kitchen cloths, made from old vests and knickers, over bathtubs, swirling together the heavy fabric of 3 children and an absent father. You'll know Margaret by her restless, disjointed shuffle, forever trying to balance in her own gravity. And when you greet her, don't mind if her smile is shy, her teeth hidden. She doesn't like to show the gap her father left at just 13. Don't try to shake hands, she'll not want to. She'll probably give you a clumsy hug, turning her face away, or clutch your arm with hands so calloused as a child. I'd try and catch her still, for long enough to touch the cracks and marvel at the toughness of human skin. So I'm going to read a poem about my dad. So my dad had something called Korskoff Syndrome, which was a result of being an alcoholic. And he was also malnutritioned. He had a funny relationship with food. And Korskoff Syndromes are like a form of dementia. And it's a result of a lack of vitamin B1. And obviously, alcohol can deplete your vitamins, but he also had an issue with food. And it was a bit of a dysfunctional upbringing for various reasons with my mum and dad, but this was one of them. So this is a poem about what it was like to sort of experience that condition as a child up until when he died when I was 20. So this is called What I Remember About Your Forgetting. And it's got an epigraph from Oliver Sacks, the man who mistook his wife for a hat. There's a story called The Lost Mariner about Korskoff Syndrome. It's a brilliant book if anybody's interested. And the quote is, "The fact that one can lose the greater part of a lifetime has peculiar, uncanny horror." 10. I'm 10 and we are standing on either side of the hospital bed. He's serious when he looks between the two of us and says, "Now which is Vicky and which is Lorna?" Mum hasn't warned us. She doesn't understand it herself. So we think it's funny, even more so when he gets up, takes his suit jacket from the locker and announces, "I'm off down the pub." We watch his skinny, pyjamaed legs disappear down the corridor, shoulder pads 2 sizes too big. 11. We are finding things to amuse us about our dad's abduction into the twilight zone, while his replacement in thinner form takes a break from dissecting the tiny portions on his plate, wanders off again to count the coins in his jacket pocket. We move things about nearby, a little each time. We want to see if he notices where his knife is, why the salt cellar is standing on top of the butter lid. We wait, but he never does. 14. Dad is a relic, all bone and blank slate, his words read from an auto cue no one else can see. He asks the date a lot, the year lost on him every time. He tells the joke he always does when he sees me dressed up. I answer with the punchline. 15. On rare nights in, he sits with a can, labelling things, songs taped from the radio, books he's recovered. I watch from the door, wondering, should I ask him, "Where are you?" I never do. 16. I've left home. Now Dad is an answering machine message that replays sometimes when the phone rings. He posts out a script he's perfecting through letters, his pen on a loop. 20. Mum from a hospital phone says, "Your dad's off." She hates fuss. I wait for Lorna to come and drive us back in time, to sit beside our father's bed again. I think of that final call. Were you there? Were you there at all? I only remember coughing, something about last orders being called. Something a bit lighter. So this is a poem about executive function or executive dysfunction. So all of the neurodiversities, not everybody who has a neurodiversity, but all of them associated, so dyspraxia, dyslexia, ADHD and autism have people, not always, but can have problems with their executive function. So the executive function is the management system of the brain. So it's things like how you sequence information, how you prioritize tasks, how you regulate sensory input and process, and all the sorts of everyday things that you need, which is sometimes, it's one of the reasons I don't like being up here in a way, if the lights are too bright and I just, or there's background noise and I start tuning into the background noise, all those kind of things. Anyway, so I was on a train from Berlin to Prague with my sister, and it was a really nice German train. So I wrote a poem about envy of this German train. So it's called German Train. I wish my mind was like this German train, with its neat fold-up storage, deep luggage racks, easy reach wall hooks, plenty of legroom, each seat with its own plug socket, little boxes attached for all the rubbish, and wide aisleways, no waiting to pass the food trolley, a separate dining carriage for pancakes and coffee, blinds you can pull down to mute the sun, a screen charting where you're going and all the places you've come from. I wish my mind was this German train, efficient, orderly, running on time, and all these thoughts, travelling to who knows where, chattering, eating, sleeping, quietly crying, or lingering at the window, lost in the face staring back. So, yeah, it can be difficult being neurodivergent, not gonna lie, it really can. But I really think, and I'm a bit cool. I made a documentary about dyslexic writers some years ago, and I'm always mindful, like there's a lot of architects are dyslexic, and there's, A lot of entrepreneurs of dyslexic and ADHD, Alan Sugar, What's the Virgin Guy, you know, Richard Branson. But I think the problem with saying, oh, there's gifts to it, is if people are struggling, it's a bit kind of, this is to say, oh, this is what is expected of you within your neurodiverse brain, neurodivergent brain. And I think that's kind of a bit of a problem. But what we do know is, because the wiring of the brain is different, that we are seeing that, you know, there's particular things that are associated with neurodivergent brains. So for me, I think being autodidactic, so being able to self-teach if we're interested in things. I'm really good. Sometimes I'm completely terrible at it, depending on the executive function, but I'm pretty good at big picture thinking and detail-orientated thinking, pattern seeking. There's all sorts of things. And obviously we know the stereotypes of maths and science, but clearly there's a huge amount of creative people who are neurodivergent. So I wanted to do a poem about that, and I feel in some ways that myself and my siblings maybe statistically shouldn't have done as well as we have in some ways, and I really think it's because we found niches for our brains. So this is the story of my brother's niche. And it's after Julia Copus, and I'll just read the title and then read on. So, Brother, this is the poem in which you don't suffer relentlessly at school, and the other boys never hold your head inside the toilet bowl or pin your chest to the sports hall wall to get a girl to smack you. Where you never try to score a goal in the wrong net, or get called brainless by teachers, never have the blackboard cleaner thrown at your head, because your mind can't stop wandering off to fix the code on the little screen of your ZX81, then ZX Spectrum, TI 99 4A, Commodore 64 128. No, wait, yes it is. It's the opening to the same poem in which you learn what chemotherapy is. And still a boy, shoulder your best friend's coffin, then run from the graveside when they lower him into the earth. The poem in which you leave the classroom, O-level-less, after years of hermiting that tiny box room, trying to drown out your noisy sisters through the wood chip wall, the constant detonations going off below. The poem in which you get your first job in a front room piled high with empty noodle pots and find kinship among others who squint with the curtains shut, who, like you, don't care for fashion or small talk. And together you inhabit the worlds you build in crude pixels, so boys and their sisters everywhere might joyfully, recklessly pretend to speed in supercars along winding highways and mountain roads to level up and keep on going to destination high score. Now fast forward, change gear, and here you are in this poem, brother, turning it all into fuel, being the first kid, maybe the only one from school, who grew up to drive the cars you drew, the Lamborghini, the F50, not for the flash but the speed, the impeccable design, for how the road lies down for you, like it always knew you'd be coming. And Andrew, I know you'll tell me you don't understand poetry, and you'll quibble over precise facts, but look how you ended up writing this. Look how you decided on what this poem would be. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it. Last poem. I think I'm going to read. Which one shall I read, Ward? Because we were going through these. The one you are. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Last poem. So I feel like this is a bit of a sort of an apology to my younger self, because I think coming from the background I did, kind of working class background that was quite dysfunctional, my parents out of work, all sorts of kind of crazy stuff, and then not understanding myself, I think I had imposter syndrome for years, you know, like just really like I'm not good enough and I'm a bit strange, I'm a bit this, I'm a bit that. And then when I got breast cancer when I was 40, so 8 years ago, I thought I've got to rewrite that narrative. I can't come out of breast cancer and have this same idea. And I looked at what I'd achieved and I thought it's got to go. You know, that narrative's got to go. But this is a poem sort of to my younger self, I think, really. But it's about all the things I've been talking about. So it's called Traffic. I might try and read it quick because that's the idea. But here we go. Traffic. And when they finally confirm what you'd come to suspect, that you've spent your whole life concealing her as best you could, starting with the unwritten rules for little girls from rundown homes who can't spell out sounds, who can't sit still or tell the time or tie a lace or hone the flit of their moth-headed ways. The persistent puzzle to fit the slot, its morphing shape, the falling short, the energy shift to stay composed, to bite her lip, to quash the impulse, to stim the glitch, to hold the dam, to stop the spew of speech unravelling the heart of it, the bandwidth blip, the getting lost, a compass flipped, a foreign map to read the codes with eyes too bright, with lights too bright, sore eyes, the comfort zone that she can't take beyond the door into the world she doesn't suit, its buzzwire game, her bated breath, the constant beeps, the bottleneck of incoming data, outgoing calls, the unruliness of decibels, the traffic jam inside her skull, the overwhelm, overdrive, overload, are you getting tired keeping up with this? I digress. Where was I? Yes. When you finally understand how you spent your whole life masking her like she's only this. And then you look, really look, at what she's given you and who she is. Let her stand up now. See her. Here she is. Here. Sorry. I knew I was going to do that. Damn! I knew I was going to do that. It's so near, but you're so far.
Vicky, that was amazing. Thank you so much for being so open and honest, and in all these years of like rubbing along together in Sheffield in the poetry scene, I think that's the first time I've seen you perform a full set of your own work, which just shows how much time you spend nurturing other people and giving them a platform. So it's just really special to see you on the stage. Anyway, our next poet is Nafeesa Hamid, poet, playwright, educator, performer and creative producer. She was born in Pakistan, bred in Birmingham, and uses the intersectionality of identities to inform her work. I saw her perform at Kendal Poetry Festival and I was just like, wow, who is this? And then afterwards read her debut collection, Bejharam, have I said that right? Published by Verve Poetry Press, which was highly commended in the Forward Prizes 2019, and is the sort of collection which I think sort of commands you to devour it whole. It's divided into 3 sections: body, mind and heart, and I'm sure Nafeesa will tell you a bit more about that as well. So please give a very, very warm welcome to Nafeesa Hamid.
Hello. Thank you very much for that. Hello. Thank you very much for that introduction, Genevieve, and it's a pleasure to hear your poetry. Vicky, I was trying not to get too sucked into it because I get quite emotional just hearing about the particular themes we're talking about today. As Genevieve mentioned, I've got a book. I'm trying to be really careful with this stand because I got a feeling I'm just going to knock everything over. This is my book. It's called Bejharam, and yes, there are 3 sections in it. I don't read so much from the book no more, but I think due to the themes that are being talked about in at She Festival, I thought pulling out the book was definitely a grand idea. And the reason I don't read too much from the book is, I guess, much like yourself, Vicky, it leaves me feeling quite vulnerable, which I don't like. I don't think many people like feeling vulnerable. But tonight I will be reading from it. And yeah, it's split into 3 sections, mind, body and heart. And I guess the core concept of the book was about each of those being taken hostage in some way, whether metaphorically or literally. My mind and body, I guess, have been taken hostage in many different ways over my 29 years. And then the heart section is 3 local poets from Birmingham who I decided to include as a way of kind of expressing my heart being taken hostage by the people in a nice way, in the best of ways. It's people that have softened my heart again, and I'm forever grateful for that, for people. I'll read just some poems now. So the first poem I'm going to read you is from the book. It's called Demolition, and it's about the last time I was sectioned under the Mental Health Act, and it was all the way back in 2017. And it was quite an interesting time because I was very well at the time, but I guess anyone who's being sectioned might say that, but I was well at the time. It was an interesting situation because I think being neurodivergent and being part of the mental health services is a whole nother ball game. Because I think at that point I was still not very good at expressing my needs, my feelings, my wants, anything. I find expressing myself verbally quite a challenge, which is ironic because I'm a poet and my passion is words. So in 2017 I was unable to explain to doctors why I could not take my diabetes medication at the time. The tablets were huge. I can explain it now. They were huge, and I would have a gag reflex, and I would chuck them up. So I was saying, I cannot take these tablets. And they said, well, you'll have to be sectioned under the Mental Health Act then, because we think your mental health must not be good for you to be declining medication that's keeping your physical health well. So I was carted from Birmingham to Bristol at that time, and I didn't obviously know anybody in Bristol. And my parents, who were my next of kin, were trying to also explain to the doctors that, she's actually well. Like, we can fully vouch for her this time. She is very well. But because I'd been sectioned so many times up until that point, it was difficult for my parents even to vouch for me at that point. So I was told that I'd have to go all the way to Bristol, see a doctor there who'd might not see me until a week or 2 weeks into my admission, and then I could be discharged if the doctor thought I was okay. And alas, I saw the doctor after about 2 weeks, and the doctor said, I don't even know why you're here. Go back home. So anyway, long story short, that's what this poem's about. Demolition. The demolition of my home began just before Christmas. A flyer stuck in the mouth of my letterbox. Call this number if you have any queries. And that's it. Bulldozers begin by tearing down my bedroom first. I stand and watch from my workplace. I'm numb. But remember to keep calm. Show them you are being rational. When I edge nearer to the site, I am met by men in uniforms who will not explain why. It is my home they have chosen. I am struck dumb in this dream. There are weeds in the front garden that I am most concerned about. And also my plants on the windowsill, who's gonna water them? I worry about how my manager will react when I tell him my home has been destroyed. Will he let me keep my job at the store? The uniforms complain that they have been waiting hours for my return, that the process cannot be reversed, that the paperwork has gone through, that if I had complied when they had visited in the morning, maybe, just maybe, they could have left my living room standing, perhaps even my kitchen. But I have never been good with compromising. I am greedy. I want what is mine to myself, my home, that is. When I go up to my room to chuck my possessions in a single rucksack, I am dizzy. Partially because my life is falling apart. Partially because of the brick dust that is floating about my room, choking me. An ironic representation of the system that I am stuck in. Where standing up for your rights looks much like insanity. So I don't know how many people in this room are reliant on state benefits. I am one of those people, because I do freelancing as my main work, but some days I can't do that. So during lockdown, I don't know which lockdown, one of the many lockdowns, the government decided that was a really, really good time to cut people's universal credit. Oh, thank you. I was laughing. I literally, when I got the email, I thought it was a practical joke. I told my friends, I was like, guys, I got this spam email today. And they were like, Bab, that's not spam email. I think that's a real email. I was like, no, this must be a joke, surely. And then I think my reaction at the time was just laugh and laugh and laugh into delirium. Yeah. This poem's called When They Cut Everyone's UC When they cut everyone's UC by 20 quid mid-pandemic. When they cut everyone's UC by 20 quid mid-pandemic, I thought it was okay. I don't deserve that extra bit anyway. Then I had to take a day off work to reshuffle my weekly budgeted benefits because the gas and electric bills are going up since Brexit. Even MSE and CAB got no more advice to give. My therapist, she reduces her fee for me again this week and only asks that I pay the kindness forward. I buy my mate a ticket for a gig and levitate in witness of myself creating more of this life I want to live. Yeah, so it's quite interesting. Growing up, working class. Where did that come from? I'm from Birmingham. Class, working class. And I'll talk about this a bit more in a few minutes when I read the poem that's relevant to what I'm about to say. But growing up poor can be quite interesting as an adult. Because and unlearning that kind of scarcity mindset and moving into an abundant mindset, which is very much where I was at when my universal credit was cut, and I was like, I'm gonna keep living my best life. I'm gonna spend the little bit of money I have on my friends and on my loved ones, because you know what, I've got enough food on the table anyway. So yes, it's a real blessing actually to be able to think in that way as an adult, because I don't think I'd survive otherwise if I didn't have that mentality. But something else that comes with growing up in a working class home, growing up in poverty in England, is the amount of chaos that I grew up with, and as somebody who's neurodivergent, I've learned as an adult that I hate chaos. Absolutely hate it. But alas, that was our family home growing up, and yeah, it makes me kind of really feel for my parents as well, who, you know, obviously travelled from Kashmir, you know, migrated from Kashmir to the UK, and they made the best home they possibly could have with the very few resources that they came with, which was literally the clothes on their backs, and that's it. But I think that's something I don't hear much about, or I don't hear people talking much about, is the migration experience and how neurodivergence has no space in the migration experience. There's no time to think about what kind of brain disorder or whatever I might have. So even myself, I got a diagnosis very late on for ASD, and even that, I don't know, I feel kind of lucky to have got that diagnosis, which seems really nuts, because I'm like, am I lucky, or it should just be a given, you know? Like, if you're struggling, you're struggling. But yeah, it makes me think of my parents, who will never ever get any kind of diagnosis. They're just getting on with their lives, you know, and how like that chaos, like that they continue to live in, they'll never really complain about it. They'll never, they just get on with life. Anyway, that was a little tidbit of my mind. I can't remember why I started talking about that. I'll just read the next poem. This next poem is called Gods in the Gutters. And so I take a lot of my inspiration for poetry from my surroundings. And one time I was walking around in Birmingham and I passed this bus stop. I'm really sorry, captioners. I know none of this was on the document I gave you. This is just, yeah. And I walked past this bus stop, and it was a very typical rainy day in Birmingham. And I saw this flyer on the floor, and most of it had been just torn apart by the rain. But there was this one bit that stood out, and it said, "God." And I was like, yo, is this what God is now? It's sad. So then I went and wrote a poem about it, because my partner didn't want to listen to me talking about flyers on the street. That reminded me of. Anyway, God's in the gutters. God has become a flyer, sodden at a bus stop at least 100 wet feet have stepped over. Above God, West Midlands police are recruiting young lads who get into fights, enlisted to serve and protect, and blame the poor, blame themselves for being poor, and God for everything else. I hear God only echoes from gutters, like a gambler who once had everything, like a patient on a psychiatric ward, or a teacher who was forced to forget. God's depressed because there's nothing new left. Stuck on a grey slab at the bottom of Broad Street, the stubborn edges refusing to pull themselves up. One of the biggest surprises that came out of publishing this book, which was, I don't know, maybe like a 3-4 year passion project. Also, I feel so grateful that my career involves me just immersing myself in 100 billion different passion projects. What a great life, praise be. But yeah, one of the greatest blessings that came out of this book, and one of the biggest surprises that came out of this book, was when this particular poem that I'm about to read out in a second was highly commended in the Forward Prizes, and then ended up being published in the Forward Prizes Poems of the Decade anthology as well. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was so cool, and I guess it gave me a lot of validation. It was really cool, but also I was like, when my publisher rang me up and told me, oh, it's this poem, I was like, what poem? So it just goes to show there's so many poems that I've still not had the chance to connect with in this collection, because I guess I've moved on to many other passion projects, but it also, I don't know, it's a lot to look back at it sometimes. But I feel really grateful that because I've read this poem so many times now, I've had so much opportunity to connect with this poem that I know I wrote it, but I think sometimes when I write, like I'm just like in a bit of a dazed state or something. I don't even realize what I'm writing or where it's coming from or what it just, I don't know, it just is. So reading back on it, I'm like, yo, this is, who wrote this? Then I remember it's me and it's my life. Anyway, here we go. It's called Doctor's Appointment. My mind is all woman. It is uneasy. My doctor tells me part of my woman is ill. I don't want to woman anymore, I tell him. He nods without looking at me. His glasses do not budge from the tip of his nose as he continues to take notes. He asks, how long? I say, since my mother birthed me and named me woman. He asks, how long? I say, too long. He says the new tablets will help me woman again. So I've been writing a show as my most recent passion project, and it's about corner shops, faith, worship, and magic. And it's a series of monologues as well, so this is one of the monologues from the show. I'm pretending to be a 17-year-old boy, just FYI. I'm not an actor. Boys on the beat. I jump over the chip shop fence, land in the back garden, parkour all the way to the slanted roof. Mastered that when I was 7, when I was knee deep in fantasy. Back when it were lessons over sessions, now I land in my bed with a sign, a grunt, not a squeak or a sound from mum. My parents clocked ages ago. I know, they know, I know, they know, I know, they know, I know. I were a different smell. A different boy floating now. They don't ask me where I go no more. Plead with God in the hours it's just you and God. Ya Rab, most merciful, most kind, most compassionate, please bring our boy to you. Put our boy upon the path to you. Open for our boy a good door, the right door, a righteous door. The light's gone from his eyes, they tell the imam. He don't have a key no more, but he's always back by Fajr just before his dad's up for work. And for so long we had no clue. Least I come back. Mum's glad. I know they say all this. I know it's best not to say nothing. Wouldn't know how to say what to say, even if it were safe. It's not that I don't want to come back, nah. I know that each minute it gets closer to sunrise, the worse it'll be. I know, but what's holding me back? Oh, wish I knew. It's more a feeling. I know about the articles my dad reads. I know about how mum worries. I know all about the canisters littering the streets and all the shoulders, which ones to brush up with, which ones to flee. I'm no fear now, because that's what boys are supposed to become and be. Of course, I sleep sound. Rise around 3, back on the beat. I've got 2 more poems for you. This one's called Naseeb, which in Urdu it means like your journey, like Qismat is your destination, I guess. So therefore Naseeb is the journey to take to your Qismat. My parents don't go to cafes on a Saturday or watch TV together with popcorn and the lights off. They don't flick through video games to pick and play the weekend away at leisure. My mum does sometimes take walks around the local park, and my dad did used to play squash at the gym. But they've never ordered food on Just Eat. Never watched The Matrix, never learned to ride a bike, although she could do cartwheels with her eyes closed until she was moved a continent away from her family. Never had a best friend though, never needed one. My parents don't have birthdays, but they do have savings. He has been sightseeing in London, has a photo with his friends squinting in Trafalgar Square wearing 70s flares. He did get all the visas sorted, did bury his mum in the nearest Mussalman Wali Qabristan, Smethwick, but never got to take her on that trip to Portugal. My mum is impossible. A trick unto herself to make you gasp. My dad never knew how not to be dad. The sweat and swollen ankles of a hard worker. He never knew how not to tend a till or count notes that rapid. It will all be worth it so long as Allah is watching. This is your Naseeb. Someone must have told them a long, long time ago. Summer 03. I lost my mind somewhere on an A road back to Birmingham. Back to rock, back to Amma, back to Kulfi sticks on lazy Sunday evenings in front of ITV, back to my best mate next door. I lost my mind. Found it swept behind the chewed up sofa we saved from Bavia Road. I lost sight of myself in the pixels of a disposable photograph. I lost the money Amma gave me, meant to print the film. I lost 50p for the 7-Up can. I lost it all. Mothballs are nauseating. No. Like meat rotting in a hot car with the windows on child lock. I found men and I found cars. I found something in everything. I found something that summer after all. Thank you so much.
Oh, I don't really feel ready to speak. That was absolutely amazing, Nafeesa. Thank you so, so much. And please don't forget that everyone who's reading tonight, their books are available at the bookstall, and I'm sure if you ask them very nicely, the poets will sign the books for you. I'm saying that now before I forget, but we do have one more reader for you, which is Mr. John McCullough. He's come all the way from Hove. His third book of poems, Reckless Paper Birds, was published with Penned in the Margins and won the 2020 Hawthornden Prize for Literature and was also shortlisted for the Costa Poetry Award. His fourth collection, Panic Response, was published by Penned in the Margins in 2022 and was a Book of the Year in The Guardian, as well as being included in the Times list of notable new poetry books 2022. And it's been a really big influence on me personally as well, and just I'm really, really delighted to have John here to read you his work. So welcome, please, to John McCullough.
Thanks so much for having me. I haven't been to Sheffield before, and I'm really privileged to read alongside two cracking poets. Really enjoyed both Nafeesa and Vicky's readings. I'm going to begin with some poems from Panic Response, which is the latest book, which I'm here to plug. And this is particularly, themed around mental health and, as you'll see, my own experiences of neurodivergence. The first poem I'm going to read is really important to me. It's, just to warn you, it's quite a dark piece. And it's about something which happened a long, long time ago, 20 years ago, and I couldn't write about the events until a couple of decades had passed, and this newspaper cutting literally kind of fluttered out of a cupboard one day, and it was about a chemistry teacher of mine who's my teacher for GCSE and A-level, and she inspired in me a love of science that's persisted across my work, and what happened to her was truly terrible. And I couldn't write about it because I didn't want it to define her. And then with this book, I decided to be a bit more experimental, and I discovered, well, not discovered, but like I learned about like crossing out words, you know, strike throughs, so that I could have the difficult language on the page, but also rejected. It was really important for me to write something which would make her live on and go into the future rather than be defined by what happened. And I said in my workshop the other day that I truly believe that a poem can be something rather than just be about something, that it can be an intervention in the world, that it can have tangible effects. This is my elegy for my chemistry teacher, Avril Brown, who lived from 1951 to 2002. It's called Quantum. And just so you know, when I raise my finger, that means that on the page, the lines are struck through. Quantum. Now and then, the past flutters out of a cupboard. I cradle a yellowed newspaper cutting. Mrs. Brown, my chemistry teacher, found dead. Her husband stabbed her 47 times with a screwdriver. He barely spoke a civil word to her, said the prosecutor, once he lost his job after a stroke, while she became head of department. This needs correcting. Avril was a lilac potassium flame. She talked to phosphorus, encouraged it to turn hexagonal. Her clan, gauze, tongs, crucible. She never gave up on experiments, including the boy who kept smashing conical flasks, whose thermometers rolled off desks to their doom. Oh, for goodness sake, here, try again. In the picture that comes when I hear her name, she is tilting, arms spread, as she tears round the lab, aping an excited electron. How it radiates vigor, shapes light. You cannot kill an electron. It has no substructure. Avril, in this image, is both particle and wave, past and future. Her grin wide as she accelerates, decade after decade. Avril inspired in me a love of science, and this next poem engages with that to the extent that I live by the coast nowadays, I live by the beach, and sometimes if you're lucky you see out from shore this glowing blue plankton, which seems really beautiful. But I was reading an interview with a marine biologist, and she was saying that what seems to us very beautiful is actually the plankton being really lost and terrified, and, you know, it's their panic response, which is what gave the book its title. And I wrote this poem in the first month of the pandemic in 2020, when a lot of my friends were experiencing kind of health anxiety for the first time. Electric blue. The radiance is visiting again. A bloom of shimmering plankton at low tide that lifts the brutal shore to space. conditions must be perfect for their blue glow. The darkness total. They must be far from home, completely lost, exiled by currents, then panicked by the foamy smack of breakers. This is no bounty for them. It's horror, this brilliance that quivers, arcs. Picture it now, so you'll remember the scene one lonely midnight when your heart assaults your ribs. The galactic light of tiny selves that never wanted anything like this, but together finished up terrified, magnificent, brightly living the only way they know. This piece is one of a number in the book which engages with mental ill health, and there's kind of a running theme in the book around anxiety and both personal and cultural. But this is one of the kind of more cartoony ones, so you are allowed to laugh. Like, yeah, this is fairly cartoony, this poem. Kind of often my therapist would say that I sublimate, I turn things which are traumatic into things which are surreal, and things which kind of like, rewrite trauma and kind of like explore, make it really extreme. This poem also contains many strange facts within it, which is one of my great loves, happiest with. I love poetry, but if you give me a book of strange facts about animals, then I'm truly, truly delighted. And leave to dry. On Halloween, I'll get my face tattooed blue-grey and dye my hair white like a photographic negative. I want to cancel myself. The burglar alarm inside me has been going off for 40 years. I can't stop stealing from my former selves, telling adventurous lies. I'd rather be reachable than clever. I carry around a suitcase filled with spiky voices, a who's who in barbed wire, and they scare me shitless. Some Victorians kept hedgehogs in their kitchens to deal with cockroaches. But what did they keep to deal with hedgehogs? Personally, I'll do anything to avoid watching predators on wildlife documentaries. I'd rather eat my own foot. Not that it deserves it. Please blame the nefarious sponge that's called my brain. The small tentacles, which are my toes and fingers, should receive a lesser sentence. Only did what they were told. Yes, it was me all along with the spanner in the ballroom. Ever since, I've lived a new life as a squeaky bone for my personal Cerberus. I can't stop washing containers, thinking how the handles of upturned saucepans are long Pinocchio noses. I wipe them clean, place every head securely on the rack. I don't normally read this next one out just because it's a little bit long. It is 4 minutes long. But with the theme of the evening, I thought I would. This poem is the most experimental thing I've done, I think. It was shortlisted for the Forward single poem in 2021 or something, a couple of years ago. And it's really unlike everything else I've ever written. And it's in 26 kind of lettered sections that are all muddled up. And it engages with a disastrous PhD I did many, many years ago in an area that I didn't pursue any further afterwards, as you'll see in the poem. Like, I did it, and then that was just totally the end of that, and I didn't, but it also plats it together with something which is a lot darker. So just to warn you, this poem does contain references to suicide, and tells, another story from my life. So it's in 26 lettered sections. They seem jumbled, but it becomes clear, I hope, as it goes on. Flower of Sulphur. X. I love poetry, but I love my friends more. C. In friendship, the absent be present, the needy never lack, the sick think themselves whole, and that which is hardest to be spoken, the dead never die. Cicero, De Amicitia, translated by John Harrington, 1550. S. Friends were my 20s. Stuck for a PhD topic, I stayed inside a known city. R. Much that seems effusive to the new scholar is routine. Special and divine friends abound. John McCullough, Disputable Friends, Rhetoric and Amicitia in English Renaissance Writing. T. You were the first friend to take a poetry course of mine. I thought this will be a test for me. W. Take an object from the bag and write about its weight and texture. P. The humanist education system encouraged the keeping of commonplace books with strewn phrases, proverbs on friendship. A. There are 26 objects, each linked to a letter of the alphabet. Who has A, the agate? F. Lately, I've been stroking the limits of what I know, what I've forgotten, where this bleeds into what I've never understood. B. Francis Bacon compares friendship to the most painful remedies. Sarza to open the liver, steel to open the spleen, flower of sulphur for the lungs. Bacon of friendship. M. The bag of mysterious objects is sorry. The course I taught you did not save your life. Y. All things, Laelius notes, be by friendship kept together, and by debate scattered, and this all men both perceive and prove in very deed. Cicero. N. They found you in the bath, wrists opened, no note. L. There is no life without friendship. J. You'd started learning Japanese. You were heading for Wakayama Prefecture in 6 months' time. No one knows what you planned to do there. E. Laelius calls the prolonged mourning of a friend an error. For a man to be grievously troubled for his own losses, it is selfly love and not friendly love. Q. I didn't go to your funeral. Why? I don't know. Whether this was wrong or right, I don't know. H. Unable to write one PhD chapter, I had a breakdown, moved back in with my parents. U. For 5 days after you died, it snowed and snowed. I built a white cat in my front garden, sticks for arms. G. He that beholdeth his friend doeth, as it were, behold a certain pattern of himself. Cicero. D. The snowcat's arms dropped away in the night. Z. In Wakayama, there is a shrine that has a yearly service for broken sewing needles that worked hard and now rest in a soft bed of tofu. K. The signs of friendship do not mean as fully or securely as is expected of an ideal to be preferred before all kind of worldly things. V. After my viva, I lost all interest in Renaissance friends. I use my PhD as a doorstop. I. Still, I stroke the gaps. O. The order of the alphabet is arbitrary, you said. Why not start at X? Thank you. This next one's a bit lighter. It's actually, though it's an elegy, it's a very kind of celebratory elegy. This was for John Ashbery, who passed away a number of years ago. And I've always been influenced by Frank O'Hara and John Ashbery, just what they did with imagery, really. As I say, I'm really drawn to surrealism, and I really enjoy the dreamlike shifts in Ashbery's work. So I thought, for my poem about him, that it would just be this big kind of like series of dreamlike shifts with obviously a few animal facts thrown in there for you. And yeah, that's all you really need to know, I think. And in memory, John Ashbery, 1927 to 2017. How much beauty would you like with your pond today? Monet paid a gardener to dust his water lilies before he painted them, messed their petals up the right way. It's always a problem. The shimmering ones twirl past your window, and you feel like a disused petrol station. Though it's no good waiting beside a cuckoo clock as if you were a stalker. That's just putting the cuckoo in charge. The harp sponge traps its prey in the beautiful grill of its body. It dissolves small fish cell by cell. But sponges have no brains. Are they wicked? Sometimes you don't really need to ask. End up saying ping pong tree sponge because you can. So you might spring free from a warehouse of Januaries. You buy colour-changing lights, or at the bakery, a cluster of ampersand-shaped donuts. And. How do the beautiful feel about this? I hear the frozen waterfall holds no particular position on being a metaphor for just about everything. Should it be thanked, even though it wouldn't care? Thank you, originally from think, as in, I will remember what you did for me. This, despite the impossibility of recalling every beautiful entity you've thanked, especially the trees. Of course, it's not up to you anyway. The Edwardian houses opposite didn't ask for your permission to exist, and neither did their artful arrangement of strangers. You had no say, any more than you did on gravity or being born, the century and timeline your flesh popped up in, like dubious toast. Yet it seems more than acceptable to be lost in a new and beautiful manner, the way an eel curling over fenland in its sleeve of mucus can find itself of a sudden in someone's garden, then gobbles up beans and peas. And this is only the latest chapter, this body that, whatever you do, eventually unwinds, visited increasingly by invisible animals of silence. They float in and out of the living room, gentle as manatees, drifting through on long, beautiful migrations. One of the biggest things that's helped me to grow as a writer over the years is embracing the whole of me in terms of embracing vulnerability, in terms of embracing the side of me which is incompetent, foolish, accidental. I think in my early work that I was probably too perfectionist and that it could make things too polished and too cerebral or detached. And I think that what really helped me to get where I wanted to go as a writer was really trying to dig into that, really right into the side of me, which is clumsy and always falling over and making mistakes, which is what this poem is about. And it has a title from the great philosopher Britney Spears. This poem's title is Oops, I Did It Again. Oops, I did it again. Error from the Latin errare, to stray, a deviation from correctness. I spell my surname wrong on the estate agent's form, or assume the moth on my hand is a finch. Robert Browning used twat in Pippa Passes, thinking it was what a nun wore on her head. The great American poet I sent my work to felt one last line was a leap too far. The undeleted instruction, sort out this fucking awful ending. I don't think I ever did. My dodgy sat-nav always sends me off the highway too early, too late. The one question, what colour is my catastrophe today? That email to a straight male editor with a string of kisses. Claret, my doomed relationship with Craig, dark blue. In the 19th century, there were manifold sightings of a non-existent planet called Vulcan. It hangs over me still, guiding experiments which seem like failures only for a while. ripped apart by error. I wake up naked, the filthy air remembering everything, even the dream where after I spilled tea on Noel Coward's shirt cuff, he whispered, "How alive of you. Go on, do it again." I'm going to read a couple of new poems that I'm working on. It probably doesn't need me to say anything. I've been working on a manuscript that's kind of all about crowds and class, and kind of especially the intersection of queerness and class. Giraffe. "You're working class, my lad, don't you forget it," said Mum, voice raised and finger hovering. She was talking to a giraffe, a lanky boy prone to ideas above his station, soft ways of slipping skyward. I loved being a giraffe though, a vegetarian in fairyland, the staircase of my neck leading nowhere sharp. I loved not being a lion, even though that meant being hunted, predators slashing at me till I galloped away. I loved withdrawing to invisible acacias, cathedrals of leaves where my elastic tongue licked what it liked. Because I loved discovering other giraffes, entwining bodies and nibbling necks, or simply standing together as a crowd, as a forest of extravagant breathing. I'm just going to read to you two more poems. This next one's another new one. It's really weird. It appeared in Poetry Review a few weeks ago, and as is so often the case with magazines, it was just the one that I put in to kind of make up the numbers, and I wasn't at all confident in this poem myself, because it embraces head-on kind of my own, again, clumsiness. There's a lot of, there's a lot of falling over in this poem and walking into things. And it's got a lot of exclamation marks in it as well. Thank you, Frank O'Hara, for that one. Let's read that. Watermelon Man. Excuse me while I walk into the nearest wall. Don't worry, but I'll probably fall off the pier. I need crash mats around me always, flung about as I am by statements, ditties, smells. My head is a meteorite falling horizontally. My legs a tall calamity on the loose, chaotic as escaped giraffes. I stumble into a market stall and demolish its parsnip museum, create an everywhere of celery. Tramping beside a row of houses that are different shades, each bar of colour slams forward and dizzies me, so for a second I see nothing else. Lilac, magenta, blue. It's like being attacked by my first xylophone. A musical disaster, but rather fun. Yes, keep doing it, world. Rearrange me. Keep tripping me up as I try for normal. Attempt to lug this heart, unwieldy as a watermelon, dropped and salvaged each day, but firmly sweet. I was going to read you one last poem. This one's from Rex Paper Birds, probably the book I'm best known for. This poem is my favourite, my personal favourite in the collection, just because it's a love poem to my other half, and it's a very manic, anxious love poem, and that's probably, all you need to know. Thank you for listening to me. Stationery. September is going all out to ease us in. The clouded sky is a whiteboard for helpful diagrams. The first cool air as welcome as your hand inside my jeans. Autumn zips round with its orange highlighter, and you provide nifty shocks and marshmallows, leaving pornographic post-its that ask me to rendezvous, please, for hot chocolate. I am the type of man who likes unnecessary displays of manners, who appreciates thank you cards, warning signs, a forest of regretful notices for building works. I admire rows of ginkgos that lose all their foliage in one drop to form a yellow brick road. I am a desperate lion today, stalking scarecrow. I chew biros, glimpse at my watch too often. I was so afraid of being late to see you once. I turned up 6 days early. Love is horrific like that. First it's a rabbit, then a duck, then it's a ravenous one-eyed sock puppet. But the rest is yogurt adverts, and you fasten my thoughts with the most beautiful paper clips, even the filthy ones, like the time I saw a grove of ripening chili plants become a rainbow of penis trees. Do you wish to continue? Says the voice of a self-service checkout. Yes, yes I do. Between the shops, the sea snuggles under its blue leaves. The clock tower waits patiently for Christmas. A familiar figure below it, waggling his arms to lure me over, succeeding. Your skillful face punches a giant hole in the day, and I jump through it. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for filling us all with so much joy. And I always think if your poems is like being painted in big, bright colours somehow. But anyway, I'm going to welcome all the poets back up to the stage to have a seat. And yeah, give them another round of applause. Okay, so we've not got long, so don't worry, you're not going to get too much of a grilling. How's everyone feeling? We all okay? Good. I wanted to start off by asking you each about your relationship to poetry and perhaps why it might be that, like, what is it that drew you to poetry perhaps as a way to harness thoughts, thinking, the way that brains work in a way that maybe our other modes of communication might not? Does that make sense?
I'm passing it on. Passing it on. I need a lot of time to process it.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, why not? So I think I thought I started writing poetry in college when I was 17 or 18, because I would just get really bored in my English Lit Lang classes, and one time I read some Rossetti and I thought, I can write better than that. Which was really, really quite egotistical of me at the time. But I think the real reason I turned to poetry, I'm not going to lie, is because novel writing took too long. I didn't have enough time to sit around writing a novel. And then I found prose poetry as well, and I was like, wow, I can write a poem and a novel in one. Wow, that's incredible. And then I found out about spoken word, and it was a really good way for me to build up my self-esteem, my confidence at that age. So I began to perform and realized how much impact you can have in such a short, I saw that as a challenge. And even to this day, the shorter the poems I write, the more impactful they tend to be. And it worked for me, you know, it helped me express whatever I needed to express and helped me process whatever it is I was trying to process. Whereas novel writing, I think it dilutes it even more for me. I just lose track of what on earth I'm trying to say. Whereas poetry keeps me on track, it keeps me focused.
Quite good. I think similarly, I was really drawn to poetry as a teenager. I was Watford's gay Sylvia Plath at the age of 17. I was writing very dramatic poems about that subject matter. I think, as with Nafeesa, I find poetry I'm really drawn to it for its intensity and its focus on images and how you can really push things to extremes. Because it is short, you can go really far in a short space and I don't know if it's related to neurodivergence, but I struggle to read novels. I read really slowly, and I tend to like over sentences and things, and so I really like a short, intense. As a reader, I really like things which are short and intense. So I was a reader of poetry before I was a writer, and my own enjoyment of other people's poems is a source of a lot of pleasure for me, and that's partly why I write, I think, because I read, and because over the years I've come to have lots of other friends who are poets, and it really, enriches my life, nourishes my life, that kind of community of poets, I think.
Everything these guys have said, I totally agree. There's something about distilling language, just really feels like you're making it into an essential oil, almost, and that sounds really weird, but and I'm the same. I definitely think for me it's attention issues a lot of the time. I listen to a lot of podcasts, books and other things because I like to do, because I've got ADHD. I'm doing while I'm processing and listening. But I feel like poetry is an achievable form in the same way as you're saying. It's just, and I feel like I know the rules, if you like. It's like I understand how a poem works. And it's a bit geeky when you understand how a poem works, isn't it? So, my first memories of poetry, when my dad used to come in from the pub and recite poems to us. And back in the 80s, when the TV went off quite early and stuff like that. So I had a really good memories of oral poems being read, and what it was doing for my imagination from a young age. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to open it up to audience questions. If yes, I think Kate has got a microphone that she can pass over.
Hello. Is it working? Yeah. Thank you all, by the way. Really great readings. I've got a question. Nafeesa, you mentioned the phrase scarcity mindset, and for the past year, I've been really thinking a lot about material scarcity and how that relates to the possibilities of language when we sit down to write a poem. And it's almost as if, as working class writers, those two are in sharp opposition. Our material scarcity doesn't quite relate to the abundance of language or the possibility of language that's open to us when we sit down to write a poem. So I just wondered if anyone had any opinions on that.
I'm really glad you've allowed me that perspective. You've shared that perspective, because I'm quadruple lingual. I don't know. I know I speak many languages, and God, it's so frustrating actually when I can't find the language to express to my family, particularly in our mother tongue, what it is I'm trying to express. And so I quite often fill in with English words, but it's never, oh, there's my scarcity mindset coming in. I can sense it. It's creepy. It never feels quite enough it never quite captures what I'm trying to say, because their understanding of English is not as nuanced as my understanding of English. And sometimes, even if I was to use the term scarcity mindset, they'd be like, why did we send you to university? What have you come back with? So I've forgotten, could you say the question again, please?
Material conditions as a working class person, and that scarcity and precarity that we have is really contrasted to the possibility of language in poetry. And I find those two quite interesting to sit with. And I just wondered if you had any opinions on that.
I guess just that then, what I said. I mean, language is expansive, isn't it? it's limitless, especially if you're bilingual, if you have, I guess the gift of being able to speak many different languages, then language is even more limitless. But I guess, that's like growing up, I probably had more of a scarcity mindset when it came to language, and I'm just sat here feeling even more grateful that poetry came into my life, because it made me realize that I can actually learn to express myself in so many different ways. So if I'm struggling with this one way of expressing myself, growing up, I would only ever speak my mother tongue with my family, with my parents in particular, even though they can fully speak English, like they run a corner shop, they have to speak English. But I had it in my head that I could only speak my mother tongue with them. And so I was also a selective mute growing up as well. And when I think about that in hindsight, I'm like, I must have constricted myself so much and thought, if I can't find the word in my mother tongue, then I cannot express. I can't speak to my parents, or I can't speak to anybody if I can't find the word in that language. But I think I'm very grateful that, when I got into my teens and early adulthood, and began to explore story writing and literature, and realized actually there are other ways I can express myself, and it's okay to mix up a little bit of English and Mirpuri or Urdu or whatever other language I'm talking. It's okay to mix them up a bit, because the most important the most important outcome is that I'm connecting with other humans, and so even if it is, even through muteness, I was trying to communicate something, which was mainly that I can't find the words. Yeah, just that. Thank you for asking that. I don't know if anyone else, if you've got any thoughts on that as well.
I suppose where it touches on my own writing is, I've been working on a book about class, really, and kind of, as the giraffe poem, I suppose, brings to life, for me, there was a real opposition between extravagant language, poetic language, and the environment in which I grew up in, which was kind of certainly not somewhere that I could express not being heterosexual, and not somewhere where I could even be literary. Like my mum, like most people in my life when I was growing up, thought that me reading books all the time was I was getting ideas above my station. I was kind of you know what I mean, got designs on kind of escaping away, and kind of you think you're so good with your books. So I suppose I've been writing about, with my work at the moment, I'm engaging with ideas of poverty and scarcity, with those ideas to the forefront, and the kind of linguistic inventiveness of poetry. Like when I first started reading, Plath and Hughes as a teenager, they just opened so many doors, presented so many possibilities to me. And I suppose obviously the language of my parents is one of many other kinds of uses of language that I use nowadays in my work. I tend to mix up kind of colloquial with stuff that is from books, and that's one more that's just one strand of it.
Do you know it's really nice when you're with other divergent thinkers, because I can see the way your brains are going, oh, no. And you said repeat the question. That's what I do all the time, because you've gone off on a tangent, sorry. Yes, scarcity mindset. For me, I came to writing really late. When I left home really young, which I don't think helped. I still am massively insecure. It felt a privilege to be able to. I did a fine art degree. It put me off wanting to be an artist, really. It was a very conceptual fine art degree. I knew I wanted to connect with people creatively. And during my fine art degree, I got to work with some teenagers, and I just thought at the time I didn't know it was my ADHD enthusiasm, but I could use my enthusiasm to help other people. So I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but I suppose what I mean about this scarcity is always fear of not being able to pay the rent, you know, things like that, where you don't put creativity first. But also, when we're talking about sort of working class mindset, it feels really indulgent to be creative. It did for me. And because I did, you know, like, because I knew I was dyslexic when I was about 30, but I always knew I had glitches, but I didn't get a test till I was 30. And it was just this combination of, who do you think you are? You know, always in the back of my head. But my thing was to enable other people, because I knew the value of it, because it was missing in my own life. So I thought, if you can tell other people they can, it's like a superpower, you know, and then it grows, and that's why I love what I do, because you see it grow, you see it make a difference. So I think scarcity also can make you really resourceful. I'm irritatingly resourceful, you know. That's what I'd say. You know, like I'm always trying to save money, and always like to the point where it's detrimental. Do you know what I mean? It's really unhelpful, and yeah. But anyway.
Thank you, Vicky. I love that there's so much love for these poets that they're getting clapped for every answer. Like, that's how much we believe in what you have to say. Unfortunately, we don't have time for any more questions because we've got a bit of a quick turnaround now. I can't quite believe I'm saying this, but the final event of the Sheaf Poetry Festival is coming up at 8 o'clock. I think I've been living here for about 3 years now with this strange new family. But yeah, it is the final event, and it's the Sheffield Showcase closing party. We've got a really amazing lineup with Helen Moore and Rachel Bauer, Sile Sabanda, and some hip hop from Rosie PM. And so please come back, and also please fill in a feedback form if you feel like doing so. Put your names on the mailing list if you want to hear about whether we ever decide to do this again, which I'm sure we will. Please buy books, ask the poets to sign them, and just give another really, really big round of applause to Nafeesa, John and Vicky.